They say a crown is a blessing. They're wrong. A crown is a cage dressed in gold. And Veda Bautista had spent her entire life trying to escape hers. The council had given her an ultimatum: accept the throne and the mate they chose for her, or watch everything her parents died for crumble. 3 suitors stood before her, each more ambitious than the last, their wolves practically salivating at the thought of ruling through her. The decree was clear. She had until moonrise to decide. What the council hadn't accounted for was that a cornered wolf is the most dangerous kind. When the guards dragged a hooded prisoner through the great hall, some rogue who'd dared trespass on sacred ground, Veda saw her chance. One kiss. One moment of defiance. That's all it would take to shatter their careful plans. She never imagined the rogue's lips would taste like freedom, or that the mate bond would snap into place, like destiny itself had been waiting for this exact moment. She definitely didn't expect to discover he'd written the very decree that cornered her. Before we continue, hit like and subscribe. Trust me, this story only gets better. Drop your country in the comments, and let's see how far Veda and Wilder's story travels. Now, let's get into it. Chapter 1. The Great Hall erupted like a powder keg meeting flame. Raoul Small moved first, his wolf rising so close to the surface that his eyes blazed amber. He lunged across the marble floor toward Wilder, murder written across every line of his face. The guards barely caught him, 3 men struggling to hold back his rage. "She's defiled herself with a criminal!" Raoul's voice cracked with fury, spittle flying from his lips. "The sacred bond has been violated. She's chosen execution over honor." Veda's heart hammered against her ribs. The mate bond hummed between her and the hooded rogue, a golden thread she could almost see, tying them together in a way that made her skin burn and her wolf sing. She'd meant to spite them. She hadn't meant for it to feel like coming home. Council leader Terence Horton rose from his seat, his ancient face twisted in cold calculation. "Lady Veda Bautista, by bonding with the criminal trespasser, you have violated every sacred law of succession. The throne is forfeit, and the penalty for bonding outside your station is death." "For both of them," another council member added, their voice dripping with satisfaction. That's when the rogue spoke. "You wanted her to choose." His voice rolled through the hall like distant thunder, deep and educated, each word precisely chosen. Not the rough growl of a common criminal, but the measured tone of someone who'd been raised in council chambers. She chose. Veda's head snapped toward him. That voice. That wasn't the voice of a vagrant caught trespassing. That was the voice of someone who'd commanded rooms before. Terrence's lips curled. She chose a dead man. Did she? Movement at the hall's entrance drew every eye. Florence Huff, Veda's cousin, glided into the chaos with a smile that made Veda's blood run cold. "Cousin, you always were so predictable. So desperate to escape the cage that you'd grab the first key offered, even if it was made of rusted iron." The pieces clicked together in Veda's mind with sickening clarity. You orchestrated the decree. The council orchestrated it, darling. I simply suggested they include that delicious clause about choosing by moonrise. Florence's eyes gleamed. And you performed exactly as expected. Now the throne passes to me, and you get to die with your precious freedom. Raoul had stopped struggling against the guards, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Fitting. The last Bautista dies a traitor." The rogue, Wilder, she realized, as his name surfaced in her mind through the bond, turned his head slightly toward her. His eyes, dark and fathomless beneath the hood, met hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "Do you trust me?" She should say no. She didn't know him. She'd used him as a weapon against her enemies. And now, they were both about to pay the price. But the mate bond thrummed between them, insistent and undeniable, and something in his gaze promised that this wasn't over. Yes. The word had barely left her lips when he moved. The chains binding his wrist shattered like glass, iron links exploding outward with a force that sent the nearest guard stumbling back. Wilder surged to his feet, and Veda finally understood why the bond had felt so right. Power rolled off him in waves. Alpha power, the kind that made lesser wolves bare their throats. He grabbed her hand, and the contact sent lightning up her arm. Run. They moved as one, Wilder cutting through guards with brutal efficiency, while Veda's wolf rose to meet the challenge. She'd been trained to dance and smile, not to fight. But instinct took over. A guard grabbed her arm. She twisted, feeling bones crack beneath her grip. "The passages!" Wilder shouted, pulling her toward a tapestry she'd passed 1,000 times. He knew the castle. He knew the hidden ways. "Who are you?" She wanted to scream, but there was no time. Behind them, Raoul's roar of fury shook the walls, and the sound of pursuit thundered through the corridors. Wilder yanked the tapestry aside, revealing a narrow passage carved into the stone. "After you, my lady." The title was mocking and reverent all at once. Veda dove into the darkness, Wilder right behind her, and the last thing she heard before the passage sealed was Terrence's cold command. "Mobilize the hunters. I want them both dead by dawn." Chapter 2. The safe house appeared in the forest like a ghost materializing from mist. Veda stumbled through the door Wilder held open, her lungs burning from their sprint through the woods. She'd run for miles in silk slippers meant for dancing, not fleeing, and her feet screamed in protest. But it was the safe house itself that made her blood run cold. Dried meat hung from the rafters. A stack of firewood sat neatly beside the hearth. Clean blankets folded on the single bed. Water barrel filled to the brim. This wasn't a lucky find. This was prepared. "Who are you?" The question came out sharper than she intended, edged with the fear she'd been swallowing since the castle. "And don't give me some story about being a vagrant caught trespassing. Vagrants don't know the castle's hidden passages. They don't shatter iron chains like glass. They don't have safe houses stocked and waiting." Wilder moved past her, his movements economical and precise as he checked the windows, tested the door's lock, scanned for threats she couldn't see. Finally, he pushed back his hood. The firelight caught his features properly for the first time. Sharp jaw, shadowed with stubble. Dark eyes that held too many secrets. A scar cutting through his left eyebrow that spoke of violence survived. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 30, and far too handsome for a man who'd just made her a fugitive. "I'm a sellsword," he said, meeting her gaze without flinching. "Hired by someone who cares about justice." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I can give you." Veda's hands clenched into fists. "I bound myself to you. Do you understand what that means? The mate bond is permanent, sacred. I can never—" Her voice cracked. "I gave up everything, and I don't even know your real name." "Wilder." Something flickered across his face, too quick to read. "My name is Wilder Stevens, and I've been investigating your council for 2 years. They're not just corrupt, Lady Veda. They're murderous. Your parents didn't die in a hunting accident." The words hit her like a physical blow. "What?" "That's all I can tell you right now." He crossed to her, and she became acutely aware of how small the safe house was, how the mate bond pulled tighter with every step he took closer. But I didn't expect you to kiss me. That wasn't part of anyone's plan. Should I apologize for ruining your investigation? Bitterness leaked into her voice. No. His eyes darkened. I won't apologize for the bond, either. The air between them crackled with tension, mate bond, and anger, and something more dangerous threading together. Veda opened her mouth to respond when pain lanced through her shoulder, sharp enough to make her gasp. Wilder's expression shifted instantly. You're hurt. It's nothing. Let me see. His hands were already moving to her shoulder, surprisingly gentle as he eased the torn fabric aside. His fingers brushed her bare skin, and the mate bond roared to life between them, a wave of heat that made them both freeze. Their eyes met. His pupils had blown wide, and she knew hers had done the same. The bond wanted completion, wanted them to give in to the pull that made her want to close the distance between them and damn the consequences. You didn't have to save me, she whispered, barely recognizing her own voice. In the hall? You could have run alone. Wilder's jaw tightened. His hand still rested against her shoulder, warm and solid, and making it impossible to think clearly. Yes, he said, voice rough. I did. They were leaning closer, the space between them shrinking, his breath ghosting across her lips. A howl split the night, then another, then a dozen more, rising in a chorus that made Veda's wolf cower. The hunters had found their trail. Wilder jerked back, the moment shattered. He grabbed supplies with practiced efficiency, shoving them into a pack. We have to move, now. Veda's shoulder throbbed where his hand had been, the mate bond aching at the loss of contact. But the howls were getting closer, and she could hear Raoul's voice rising above the others, promising blood and vengeance. Wilder threw open the back door, revealing more forest, more running, more unknown. Come on, he said, extending his hand. Veda looked at that hand, calloused, strong, belonging to a man she didn't trust and couldn't escape. She took it, and together, they disappeared into the darkness. Chapter 3. 2 weeks in the wilderness stripped away every illusion Veda had ever held about herself. The first time Wilder handed her a bow, she'd missed the target by 3 feet. The second time, she'd nearly shot herself in the foot. By the 5th safe house and the 10th lesson, her arrows were finding their marks, and her hands had developed calluses that would have horrified the ladies of court. Again, Wilder said, his voice patient but unyielding as she stumbled through a tracking exercise. Your throne won't save you now, Lady Veda. The forest doesn't care about bloodlines. She wanted to snap at him, but he was right. So she gritted her teeth, studied the broken twigs and disturbed earth, and tried again. He'd been surviving alone for years, she realized. Every lesson he taught came from hard-won experience, the way he could disappear into shadows, how he knew which plants were edible and which would kill. The economical violence in how he moved, no wasted motion, every action purposeful. You're thinking too much, he said, appearing beside her so silently she jumped. Trust your wolf. She knows. The 3rd week, everything changed. Veda was crossing a stream, concentrating on the stones beneath her feet, when moss betrayed her. She went down hard, splashing into water cold enough to steal her breath. For a moment, she just sat there, soaked and furious, and so far from the girl who'd worn silk that she almost didn't recognize herself. Then Wilder laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a real laugh, full-bodied and genuine. The kind that transformed his usually guarded face into something younger, lighter. Something that made her heart skip. Oh, you think that's funny? She surged up, water streaming from her hair, and tackled him. They went down together in a tangle of limbs and laughter, splashing and wrestling like children instead of fugitives. His arms came around her waist, holding her above him, and suddenly, they weren't laughing anymore. They were staring at each other, both breathing hard, the mate bond singing between them. He released her carefully, but something had shifted. That night, sitting by their campfire, she finally killed her first deer. Clean shot through the heart. Wilder's pride showed in the slight curve of his mouth as he showed her how to field dress it. "Why did you kiss me?" he asked later, as they ate the meat she'd provided. The question hung in the smoke between them. Veda considered lying, but they'd been running together too long for that. "I was looking for an escape. Any escape." She met his eyes across the flames. "Why did you let me?" "Because it felt right." His voice was rough. Like recognition. Like something I'd been waiting for without knowing I was waiting. "The mate bond?" "No. Before that. The moment our eyes met." He leaned forward, firelight carving shadows across his face. "I'd been looking for a way to destroy the council. Instead, I found you." Her throat tightened. "I don't know what this is anymore." "Neither do I." They were leaning closer when the attack came. Hunters exploded from the tree line, 6 of them, Raoul's best. Veda barely had time to shift, her wolf bursting forth with a snarl of defiance. She was still clumsy in combat, still learning, but desperation made her vicious. A hunter lunged for Wilder's back. Veda didn't think, she just moved, her jaws closing around the man's throat, feeling life pulse and then stop beneath her teeth. The taste of blood filled her mouth, and horror and triumph warred in her chest. Then she saw Wilder's wolf. He was massive, easily twice the size of any wolf she'd ever seen, his fur black as midnight, and his eyes blazing with alpha command. 3 hunters tried to bring him down. He tore through them like they were made of paper, power rolling off him in waves that made even her wolf want to submit. This was no sellsword, no common rogue. The last hunter fled into the darkness. Wilder shifted back to human form, blood spattering his chest, breathing hard. Their eyes met across the carnage. "You're no common rogue," Veda breathed, her voice shaking. He said nothing, but the truth hung between them like a blade. Whatever he was, whoever he'd been, he was far more than he'd claimed, and she'd bound herself to him forever. Chapter 4. The abandoned temple rose from the mountain, like a monument to forgotten gods. Ancient stone walls still held carvings of the old packs, back when wolves worshipped the moon as a living deity. Veda traced her fingers over worn symbols as snow began to fall outside. Soft at first, then relentless. By nightfall, they were trapped. The storm howled against the temple walls, wind screaming through cracks in the stone. Wilder built a fire in the old ceremonial hearth, while Veda tried to ignore the ache building beneath her skin. The mate bond had been growing more insistent with each passing day, a constant pull that made her hyper-aware of every movement he made, every breath he took. 3 days the storm raged. 3 days of forced proximity with nowhere to run and nothing to distract from the electricity crackling between them. She watched him constantly, the flecks of muscle in his back as he added wood to the fire, the way firelight caught in his dark eyes when he thought she wasn't looking, the controlled tension in every movement, like he was holding himself back by sheer force of will. On the second night, pain lanced through her chest, sharp enough to make her gasp. The mate bond, unconsummated for too long, was demanding completion. Wilder's head snapped toward her, his knuckles white where they gripped the stone mantle.
Veda.
I'm fine. But they both knew she was lying. He crossed to the far side of the temple, putting as much distance between them as the space allowed. Trying to be honorable, trying to protect her from a bond she'd never asked for. Something in her snapped. Stop. She rose, closing the distance he'd created. Stop protecting me from yourself.
You don't know what you're asking.
His voice came out rough, dangerous. His eyes had shifted, more wolf than man. I know exactly what I'm asking. She reached up, tracing the line of his jaw, feeling him tremble beneath her touch. I'm asking you to stop pretending this isn't killing us both.
Veda.
Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer and a curse.
If we do this,
we're already bound. The bond is already permanent. She pressed closer, feeling the heat radiating from his body. I'm tired of fighting what we both want. His control shattered. He kissed her like a man drowning, desperate and consuming, his hands tingling in her hair as he backed her against the stone wall. The mate bond exploded between them, golden light that seemed to come from within, and Veda surrendered to it completely. They came together with an intensity that bordered on violence, all the weeks of tension and denial and running, finally breaking free. His hands on her skin burned like brands. Her nails raked down his back, claiming him as thoroughly as he claimed her. The mate bond wrapped around them, through them, binding them in ways that went deeper than flesh. When it was over, they lay tangled together on the makeshift bed of blankets, both breathing hard. The bond finally settled into something that hummed contentment instead of hunger. Veda traced the scars on his back in the firelight, feeling each ridge and mark. What happened to you? Wilder was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then,
I lost everything to corruption. My family, my pack, my name.
His voice was raw.
I was meant to be Alpha. They took it from me.
Her hand stilled. Who did?
People like your council. People who wanted power more than they wanted justice.
He turned to face her, and the vulnerability in his eyes made her chest ache.
I understand why you ran from the throne, Veda. I did too. But running doesn't stop them. It just gives them more room to destroy.
She thought of Florence sitting on her throne, of Raoul hunting them through the forest, of the council who'd murdered her parents and tried to trap her in a loveless bond. I'm done running, she whispered.
Good.
He pulled her closer, pressing his lips to her forehead.
Because I'm going to teach you how to fight.
Outside, the storm began to break. Inside the temple, wrapped in each other's arms, they both finally slept without nightmares. When morning came, everything had changed. Chapter 5. The cabin sat in neutral territory, far enough from packlands that no one asked questions, and close enough to a human village that they could trade Wilder's carpentry for supplies. 2 months had passed since the coronation that never was. 2 months of running, fighting, and learning to survive. But here, in this small cabin with a leaking roof and a crooked door, Veda found something she'd never had in the castle. Peace. She woke to find Wilder already up, chopping wood outside with his shirt discarded despite the autumn chill. She watched him from the window, admiring the play of muscle beneath scarred skin, the easy competence in every swing of the axe. He caught her staring and grinned, and something in her chest expanded with warmth. This was theirs. This simple life, this quiet routine. No council breathing down her neck, no expectations weighing on her shoulders. Just her and the mate the universe had given her, making it work, one day at a time. We need to eat something other than rabbit stew, she announced that afternoon, surveying their meager supplies. "I'm going to cook a proper meal." Wilder looked up from sharpening his hunting knife, amusement flickering in his dark eyes. "You know how to cook?" "How hard can it be?" Very hard, as it turned out. The bread burned black while she was distracted trying to keep the vegetables from turning to mush. The stew she attempted somehow became both watery and scorched at the same time. When smoke began pouring from the oven, Wilder abandoned all pretense of letting her figure it out and rushed to help. "No, you have to— Veda, that's salt, not sugar. I know what salt looks like." "Then why are you adding it to the pastry?" She spun to glare at him, and found him trying desperately not to laugh. His shoulders shook with suppressed mirth, lips pressed together, eyes dancing with an amusement that made him look years younger. "Oh, you think this is funny?" She grabbed a handful of flour from the bag. His eyes widened. "Veda, don't you dare!" She threw it. White powder exploded across his chest and face, and for a moment, he just stood there, stunned. Then he looked at her, flour dusting his hair and eyebrows, and she saw the exact moment his restraint broke. He lunged. She shrieked with laughter, dodging around the table, but he was faster. His arms caught her around the waist, lifting her clean off her feet as she wriggled and laughed and got flour absolutely everywhere. They crashed into the counter, knocking over the bag completely, white clouds filling the small kitchen. "Truce!" she gasped between giggles. "Truce! I surrender." Too late for that. But his voice had gone rough, and when she looked up, she saw the heat in his eyes had nothing to do with anger. They came together in a clash of lips and hands and desperation, her back against the counter, his fingers tangling in her hair. Flour dusted everything, the burned food forgotten, the world narrowing to just the two of them, and the bond singing between them. They didn't make it to the bedroom, barely made it to the floor, clothes shed in a trail across the kitchen, their lovemaking as playful as the fight that preceded it, laughing against each other's mouths, gasping each other's names, finding joy in the simplicity of being together. Afterward, they lay tangled on the kitchen floor, flour in their hair, breathing hard, utterly content. "I never laughed in the castle," Veda admitted quietly, her head resting on his chest. "Not like this. Not real laughter." His fingers traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "I never thought I'd laugh again." She tilted her head to look at him, seeing the shadow that crossed his face. "Is this what it could have been like?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "If I'd just stayed? Taken the throne on my terms instead of running?" Wilder's hand stilled. For a long moment, he was quiet, and she felt the weight of secrets pressing against his silence. "You did what you had to do," he said finally. "We both did." It wasn't really an answer, but she let it go, sensing the pain beneath his words. Instead, she shifted closer, pressing a kiss to the scar over his heart. "Do you have regrets?" she asked. "About the bond? About me?" He pulled her up until they were face to face, his eyes intense and honest. "My only regret is that it took so long to find you." The words settled into her chest like a promise. She kissed him again, slower this time, tasting the truth of it on his lips. They eventually cleaned up the kitchen, laughing about the disaster of her cooking attempt, made simple sandwiches for dinner instead, sat together on their crooked porch, watching the sun set over the forest, his arm around her shoulders, her head on his chest. "I'm happy," she whispered into the growing darkness. "I know I shouldn't be. I know we're fugitives, and everyone wants us dead, and I gave up everything. But I'm happy." His arms tightened around her. "So am I." She felt it then, a tremor of something she couldn't name, like the calm before a storm, beautiful and fragile, and destined not to last. But for now, for this moment, they had peace, and that would have to be enough. Chapter 6. Veda hummed as she cleaned, a simple domesticity that would have horrified the court ladies who'd once fussed over her gowns. Wilder had left before dawn to check his trap lines, promising to return with something better than rabbit for dinner. She decided to surprise him by organizing the chaos of his hunting pack. The papers were wedged beneath a false bottom, wrapped in oiled cloth to protect them from moisture. Her curiosity was innocent at first. Just correspondence, she thought, pulling them free. Maybe letters from his mysterious employer, the one he still wouldn't name. She unfolded the first page, and her breath caught. The handwriting was elegant, educated. Precise loops and careful strokes that spoke of someone raised with tutors and expectations. She'd seen this writing before. Her hands trembled as she crossed to her own pack, pulling out the copy of the decree she'd kept. The one that had cornered her, forced her to choose, destroyed her life. She laid them side by side, identical. The blood drained from her face. She tore through the rest with shaking hands. Detailed maps of the council chambers, lists of council members with notes beside each name. Corrupt, compromised, murderous. Legal precedents for succession challenges, historical records of mate bond manipulations, and plans. Months, maybe years of careful planning. Her name appeared everywhere. Lady Veda Bautista, last living heir. Naive, desperate to escape, will choose defiance over submission. He'd studied her like prey, predicted her every move, and the decree that had trapped her, forced her hand, driven her to that desperate kiss. He'd written it. The door opened. Wilder came in cheerful, carrying 2 pheasants, already talking about how he'd cooked them properly this time. Then he saw her face. The smile died. "Veda, you wrote it." Her voice came out flat, dead. She held up the papers with a hand that shook. "You wrote the decree that cornered me." He went very still, didn't deny it, didn't even try to lie. The silence was answer enough. "How long?" The words scraped from her throat. "How long were you planning this?" 2 years, maybe longer. His voice was careful, measured. "Veda, let me explain." "Explain?" The word came out like a laugh, sharp and broken. "Explain how you manipulated me? How this entire thing was just, what? Some elaborate scheme? Was any of it real, Wilder? Or was I just another piece on your board?" It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? She stood, papers scattering from her lap. Tell me how you researched me, studied me, wrote a decree specifically designed to trap me into making a desperate choice. Tell me how that's not manipulation." "The council was planning to kill you anyway." His composure cracked, desperation bleeding through. "Veda, you have to understand. Florence, Terrence, Raoul, they were never going to let you take the throne. The decree was meant to force their hand, make them reveal themselves before they could arrange an accident." "And the kiss?" Her voice broke. "Did you plan that too?" "No." He stepped toward her, and she flinched back. Pain flashed across his face. "I never expected you to kiss me. That was convenient." Bitterness flooded her mouth. "Lucky? Or was that part of the plan too? Bind yourself to the naive little heir, make her trust you, make her fall in—" She couldn't finish. Couldn't say the word love when everything felt like lies. "I fell in love with you," Wilder said hoarsely.
That was never part of any plan. Veda, please. No. She backed toward the door, feeling her wolf rising beneath her skin, desperate to escape, to run, to get away from the man who'd orchestrated her downfall. No, you don't get to do this. You don't get to manipulate me into throwing away my life and then call it love. Your life was already forfeit. I was trying to save you by trapping me? Her laugh was wild, broken. By writing the very decree that forced me to choose between death and defiance? That's not saving me.
Wilder. That's playing God with someone else's fate. Veda. She shifted before he could finish, her wolf bursting forth in an explosion of pain and fury. She couldn't bear to look at him anymore. Couldn't stand in this cabin they'd made theirs and reconcile the man she'd fallen for with the one who'd orchestrated everything. Through the door, into the forest, running as fast as her legs could carry her. Behind her, she heard him call her name, raw and desperate. But he didn't follow. Maybe he knew she'd tear him apart if he tried. Or maybe he finally understood that some betrayals couldn't be fixed with explanations. She ran until her lungs burned and her paws bled. Ran until the cabin was miles behind her and the bond in her chest screamed with distance. Ran until she collapsed in a clearing, shifting back to human form, naked and shaking, and more alone than she'd ever been. She thought she'd found freedom. Instead, she'd just traded one cage for another. And this time, she'd walked into it willingly. Chapter 7. She returned on the third day. The mate bond had become unbearable, a physical ache in her chest that made breathing difficult. Veda told herself that was the only reason she walked back through that cabin door. Not because she missed him. Not because some traitorous part of her wanted to hear his explanation. Only the bond. Wilder sat at the table, still wearing the same clothes from 2 days ago. He looked like hell. Eyes bloodshot, face haggard, the kind of exhaustion that came from sleepless nights and guilt that wouldn't quiet. When he saw her, something raw and desperate flickered across his features before he locked it down. Veda. I'm only here because we're bonded, she said flatly, crossing her arms. Don't confuse that with forgiveness. He flinched like she'd struck him. I understand. Do you? Bitterness leaked into her voice. Do you understand what it feels like to discover that everything, every moment, every touch, every word, might have been calculated? Yes. His voice was hoarse. I do. Because that's exactly what my pack believed about me when I was framed for treason. She went still. Wilder rose slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. My name is Wilder Stevens. I was alpha heir of the Shadowmere pack. He paused, watching her process that. 5 years ago, my father received an invitation to meet with the Silvercrest Council. A peace summit, they called it. A chance to unite the packs. Veda's stomach turned cold. It was a massacre. His voice went flat, empty. They killed my father, my mother, most of our council. Made it look like I'd orchestrated it to seize power early. By the time I fought my way out, I was exiled from my own pack, hunted by both territories, with nothing but the clothes on my back and the knowledge that the Silvercrest Council had destroyed everything I loved. He moved to the table, pulling out documents she recognized from her discovery. I've been investigating them for 5 years, living in shadows, collecting evidence, trying to understand why they wanted Shadowmere destroyed. His jaw tightened. Then your parents died in that hunting accident. And I knew. They were clearing the board, removing anyone strong enough to oppose them. My parents, her voice cracked, were murdered. He spread papers across the table with shaking hands. I have testimony from the tracker who found signs of a trap. A letter from Terrence to Florence discussing removing the obstacle. Payment records to an assassin who specialized in making deaths look accidental. Veda stared at the evidence, her vision blurring. She'd suspected, had always suspected, but seeing it confirmed in black and white made bile rise in her throat. The decree, Wilder continued, his voice gaining strength, was designed to force their hand. I knew they'd use it to install a puppet, probably Raoul, someone they could control. I planned to intervene before any wedding, expose them publicly when they were confident enough to show their true colors. But I kissed you instead. The words tasted like ashes. You weren't supposed to be part of this. He finally met her eyes, and the anguish there was too raw to be faked. You were supposed to be saved from it. I was going to stop the wedding, present the evidence, help you reclaim your throne from the people who'd stolen it. You were never meant to become a fugitive. Yet here we are. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling cold despite the fire. You still manipulated me, pushed me into a corner. The council pushed you into that corner. Frustration bled through his carefully controlled tone. I just gave you a weapon to fight back with. The decree forced them to reveal their timeline, their chosen puppet, their willingness to murder anyone who stood in their way. He ran a hand through his hair, looking suddenly exhausted. Was it manipulation? Yes. But Veda, they were going to kill you. With or without that decree, you had maybe 3 months before Florence arranged an accident. The certainty in his voice shook her. You can't know that. I have the contract. He pulled another paper free. Dated 2 weeks before your parents died. Florence hired the same assassin. Your name is on it. The room spun. Veda gripped the table edge, staring at her own name written in cold, clinical terms. Target: Lady Veda Bautista. Method: natural causes preferred. Timeline: before coronation. I was going to kill them, Wilder said quietly. All of them. Terrence, Florence, Raoul, every council member who participated. I'd spent 5 years planning their deaths. His voice dropped. Then you kissed me, and everything changed. She looked up at him, seeing the truth written in every line of his face. The mate bond, he continued, was never part of any plan. Falling in love with you wasn't calculated. Learning what it meant to laugh again, to want something beyond vengeance. That wasn't manipulation, Veda. That was you saving me without even knowing I needed saving. Silence stretched between them, heavy with truth and pain and the weight of shared loss. They killed both our parents, she whispered. Yes. They wanted us both dead. Yes. And you wrote a decree that cornered me into defying them. Yes. He didn't look away. I made a choice for you without your consent. I'm not going to apologize for saving your life, but I am sorry for the method. You deserved better. You deserved the truth from the beginning. Veda closed her eyes, feeling tears slip down her cheeks. Anger still burned in her chest, but it was mixing now with grief, with understanding, with the horrible realization that they'd both been pawns in the council's game, long before they'd ever met. I don't know how to forgive this, she admitted. I know. His voice was rough with emotion. But maybe you could try to understand it. She looked at him across the table, scattered with evidence of their shared tragedy. And for the first time since finding those papers, she saw him clearly. Not as her manipulator, not as her savior. As another survivor, doing whatever it took to make the guilty pay. Chapter 8. They came at dawn, Veda woke to Wilder's hand over her mouth, his eyes blazing with warning. She heard it then, the whisper of paws on earth, the rustle of bodies moving through underbrush. Too many. Far too many. Someone told them. Wilder breathed against her ear. Get dressed. Stay close. They barely made it outside before the forest exploded with wolves. 50, maybe more, pouring from the trees in a coordinated assault. Raoul's best hunters, and they'd brought reinforcements. Veda shifted mid-run, her wolf bursting forth with a snarl, and felt Wilder's presence beside her. Solid, lethal, fighting like the warrior he'd always been. She was better now. Faster. 2 months of training had transformed her from sheltered royal to something dangerous. Her jaws found throats, her claws opened flesh, and she moved with a grace she'd never known she possessed. But they were outnumbered, 10-1. A hunter caught her flank, teeth sinking deep. Pain exploded white-hot through her side. Wilder was there instantly, tearing the wolf off her with brutal efficiency. But more came. Always more. They fought back to back, moving in perfect synchronization, a dance of violence and desperation. Blood soaked the ground. Veda's legs trembled with exhaustion. Beside her, Wilder bled from a dozen wounds, his movement slowing. They were going to die here. The remaining hunters formed a circle, trapping them. Then the circle parted, and Raoul walked through in human form, dressed like he was attending court rather than an execution. "The council sends their regards," he said pleasantly, pulling a silver blade from his belt. They were quite explicit about making this painful. Veda shifted back to human, too exhausted to maintain wolf form. Wilder did the same, positioning himself between her and Raoul, despite his wounds. "It's over, rogue," Raoul continued, twirling the blade. "You had a good run. Longer than expected, honestly. But every hunt ends, eventually." He smiled. "I think I'll start with her. Make you watch." He lunged. Wilder's shift was instantaneous, and his alpha command rolled out like thunder. "Stop!" The word wasn't spoken, it was felt. A pressure that made every wolf in the clearing freeze, instinct forcing submission. Even Raoul stumbled, his attack faltering as his wolf recognized the authority in that voice. "Impossible," Raoul breathed. And for the first time, fear flickered across his face. "You're dead." "The ghost of Shadowmere. Your pack is gone." "My pack?" Wilder said, his voice carrying alpha resonance that made the very air vibrate. "Was always coming. You just never saw them." The forest erupted. 30 wolves emerged from the trees, massive and battle-ready, moving with military precision. They wore the midnight pelts of Shadowmere, and at their head ran a wolf nearly as large as Wilder, gray-furred and scarred. "Alpha," the gray wolf said, shifting to reveal a man in his 40s with knowing eyes. "We're ready." Zane. Veda recognized the name from Wilder's stories, his second-in-command, the one who'd supposedly died in the massacre. The battle turned in seconds. Shadowmere wolves tore through Raoul's forces like they were pups, coordinated and merciless. These weren't hunters. These were warriors, and they'd been waiting for this moment. Raoul tried to run, shifting mid-step, but Zane cut him off with a snarl. "The Alpha wants him alive," Zane growled. "For now." Wilder shifted back to human, and Veda watched in awe as his entire demeanor changed. This wasn't the careful, guarded man she'd lived with. This was an Alpha in his full power, radiating authority that made even her wolf want to bow. His pack formed ranks before him, 30 warriors dropping to one knee in perfect unison. "Alpha Stevens," Zane said formally. "Shadowmere awaits your command." Wilder's eyes found Veda across the clearing. She stood apart, wounded and naked, and suddenly aware that everything had changed again. He wasn't just exiled royalty. His pack hadn't abandoned him. They'd been following him all along, waiting for his signal. He could have called them weeks ago. Could have ended their running, their hiding, their desperate survival. But he hadn't. He'd stayed in that cabin with her, living like a common wolf because... "My mate," Wilder said, his voice carrying to every wolf present. "Lady Veda Bautista, rightful heir of Silvercrest. She stands with me." It wasn't a question. It was a declaration. One by one, the Shadowmere wolves turned to her and bowed, acknowledging her not as a refugee, not as a former princess, but as their alpha female. The weight of it crashed over her. This was what he'd given up by staying hidden with her. This power, this pack, this destiny. He could have reclaimed everything the moment she kissed him. Could have used her birthright and his army to take both territories by force. Instead, he chopped wood and taught her to hunt and laughed over burned bread. "Wilder," she whispered, not trusting her voice. He crossed to her, ignoring his wounds, and dropped to one knee. Not as an alpha, as a man. "I exposed us," he said quietly, for her ears alone. "Called them in. Gave up every advantage of secrecy." His dark eyes held hers. "Because losing you wasn't an option." Behind him, his pack waited. Raoul lay bound and bleeding. The forest held its breath. Veda looked at the man who'd manipulated her, saved her, loved her, and sacrificed everything to keep her alive. She extended her hand. "Get up," she said. "We have a council to destroy." Chapter 9. The Shadowmere camp sprawled through the forest like a small city, organized and efficient. Veda sat in Wilder's tent, their tent now, surrounded by maps and evidence and the weight of decisions yet to be made. "I understand why you did it," she said finally, breaking the silence that had stretched between them since the battle. "I hate that you did it, but I understand." Wilder looked up from the map he'd been studying, surprise flickering across his features. "Veda, I should have told you sooner," he said quietly. "About who I was, what I was planning. I was a coward." "You were protecting yourself." She met his eyes. "Like I was. We were both so busy running from our pasts that we crashed into each other's futures." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Poetic way of putting it." "I had time to think while running through the forest, convinced you'd betrayed me." She moved closer, studying the map spread before them. Silvercrest territory, the castle, guard positions. "And I realized something. The council cornered us both. They took everything from us. The only difference is you decided to fight back, and I decided to run." She placed her hand over his. "I'm done running." His fingers curled around hers. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we go back, not as fugitives, but as what we are." Fire blazed in her chest, righteous and burning. 2 alphas, 2 packs, 1 territory that's about to be cleansed of corruption. The plan came together over 3 days. Wilder's evidence combined with Veda's birthright and Shadowmere's forces created something the council had never anticipated. A united front they couldn't manipulate or murder. They would strike during the new moon, when the council met to officially declare Veda dead and install Florence as heir. "They think they've won," Zane said, marking positions on the map. "That makes them vulnerable." Veda studied the castle she'd grown up in, seeing it now as a battlefield. "The main doors?" "Too obvious. Wilder traced an alternative route. The passages I used to escape, they lead directly to the council chambers. We walk in while they're celebrating, and we end this. On the night of the new moon, they marched. 50 Shadowmere warriors moved through the forest like shadows, with Veda and Wilder at their head. She wore armor now instead of silk, her hair braided for battle, a silver blade at her hip. Beside her, Wilder moved with the confidence of an alpha who'd finally stopped hiding. They were magnificent together. Terrifying together. The passages opened exactly where Wilder promised. Voices filtered through the stone. The council in session, champagne being poured, Florence's laugh echoing off ancient walls. "To the late Lady Veda," Terrence's voice rang out. "May her unfortunate death serve as a reminder of what happens to those who defy tradition." "I think," Veda said, stepping into the council chamber with Wilder at her side, "reports of my death were premature." The council chamber erupted in chaos. Terrence's glass shattered on the marble floor. Florence went white as snow. The gathered nobles scrambled back as Shadowmere wolves poured through the doorways, surrounding the room with military precision. "You're supposed to be dead," Terrence breathed. "You tried." Veda's voice carried through the chamber, cold and sharp. "But you see, counselor, I reject the throne you tried to force on me." She moved forward, every inch the alpha she'd been born to be. "But I'll take the one I choose." Wilder stepped beside her, and his alpha presence filled the room. "I am Wilder Stevens, rightful alpha of Shadowmere Pack, and I have evidence of every crime this council has committed." The documents spread across the council table like accusations given form. Murder contracts, payment records, correspondence detailing the massacre of Shadowmere, plans to eliminate Veda. All of it laid bare for every noble present to see. "These are forgeries!" Florence shrieked. "Are they?" Veda picked up the contract with her name on it. "Is this your signature, cousin? The one authorizing my assassination?" Florence's face crumbled. Raoul, bound and bloodied from the forest battle, was thrown at Terrence's feet. He tried to rise, to fight, his wolf surging beneath his skin. Veda was faster. Her blade found his throat before he could shift, and she looked into his eyes as life drained from them. "That's for every moment you made me feel like prey." Terrence lunged for a hidden weapon. Wilder's command froze him mid-reach. "By ancient law," Wilder declared, his voice resonating with alpha authority, "the punishment for orchestrating the murder of an alpha family is death." The execution was swift, final, just. Florence fell to her knees, begging for mercy Veda no longer possessed. "Please, we're family." "You sold me for a crown," Veda said coldly. "You orchestrated my parents' deaths. Family would never do that." She nodded to the guards. "Life imprisonment. Let her live with what she's done." The remaining council members were dragged away in chains as loyal pack members, ones who'd known nothing of the corruption, stepped forward to pledge allegiance. The coronation happened at dawn. No elaborate ceremony, no pretense. Just two alphas standing before their united packs, crowning each other with the ancient circlets of their bloodlines. Veda placed Shadowmere's crown on Wilder's head. "For the family you lost. For the pack that never stopped believing in you." Wilder crowned her with Silvercrest silver. "For the woman who taught me that vengeance isn't enough. That building something new matters more than destroying what's broken." When they kissed, it wasn't desperate or political or born from manipulation. It was soft, real, chosen freely by two people who'd earned each other, through blood and truth, and trust, rebuilt from ashes. The packs howled their approval, the sound echoing across both territories, no longer divided, but whole. 3 months later, Veda stood on the balcony overlooking their united territory, Wilder's arms around her waist, his hand resting on the slight curve of her belly. "Do you have regrets?" he asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. She thought of the throne she'd run from, the cage she'd escaped, the desperate kiss that had changed everything. Not a single one. Good. His hand spread protectively over their growing cub. Because I choose you. Every day, I choose you. And I choose you. She turned in his arms, seeing the man who'd cornered her into freedom, who'd loved her enough to sacrifice everything. My mate. My alpha. My choice. The kiss that followed tasted like freedom earned and love freely given. And it was perfect. The end.